Today, we are introducing a paranormal event, Black Hope Cemetery, located in the southern United States. For most people, home is the safest harbor to their living. But what if one day you find that your house hides something that can threaten your life? In 1982, a couple were in their early 50s. The husband, Sam Haney, was about to retire, so he and his wife thought about leaving the city and moving to the Newport suburb of Houston, Texas, hoping to spend a peaceful life there. The new house chosen by the couple is a wooden building with 5 bedrooms and is located on the street called Pobbs. There is a road in front of the house and a forest in the back. As people accustomed to the city's hustle, the couple felt very excited when they first saw this house. The two quickly made the payment and completed all the formalities required for the purchase before making some renovations and moving in. One day in September 1983, Sam and his wife were planning to build a swimming pool in the backyard when they heard a sudden knock on the door. Sam opened the front door and saw a strange old man approaching. The old man looked a little creepy and told Sam he should fix something in the backyard. Then he took him to an open space in the yard. The old man pointed at a location and told Sam that that place could not be dug, saying that it used to be a tomb and many bodies were buried there. At that time, Sam didn't know if the man was joking or taking things seriously. He was completely dumbfounded by that, so the couple went with their original plan. Later, they ran an excavator to excavate the place pointed out by the old man. When they dug to 2 meters depth, they found some broken pine boards and 2 skeletons buried in the soil. One skeleton even had an old ring on its finger. What the old man said was true. There really were corpses here. Sam and his wife called the police that afternoon. After an autopsy, it was confirmed that the 2 bodies were buried naturally and no signs of injuries had been found, which almost rules out the possibility of murder. The burial place turns out to be a wild tomb that has not been recorded by the government, so the police could not find the identity of the remains. But the couple got terrified and scoured the neighborhood to find out who was buried in the backyard. With their efforts, they finally found an African-American named Jasper Norton. Norton is a local Aboriginal and was hired to dig graves at the age of 15, so he knew the local area very well. Norton tells Sam and his wife that the entire street was once a civilian area before it was developed. Since the second half of the 19th century, many freed African-American slaves have lived here, and the site of Sam's house has been turned to be a cemetery called Black Hope. The cemetery was built on a wasteland at the time. Although the cemetery was close to residential areas, most slaves were buried there because there were no better options. According to Norton, the most recent burials at Black Hope Cemetery were held around 1939. Judging from the location and the excavated ring, it was believed that a woman named Betty Thomas was buried near Sam's family house at the time. She and her husband were both poor, and they were buried there after their death. It should be this couple that Sam's family dug up. The new house they bought was actually built on a cemetery, which sends chills down their spines. Looking at Betty's photo and ring, they still felt very guilty. So Sam's wife bought some flowers and let Betty and her husband be reburied in the forest a little farther, hoping that the deceased can rest in peace. In the 1980s, some new families began to move to Pobb Street. The population of the community has increased and the surrounding facilities have been built up gradually. But no one knew this would soon become a well-known haunted place. Like Sam's family, another couple, Jean Williams and her husband, moved to Pobb Street in the 1980s. The year after moving, Jean noticed a strange thing. The flowers and plants she grows in the yard always die without no reason, and there will always be a weird pit near these plants. The pit is about a little larger than a person and appears rectangular. Every time Jean filled them up, they would sink again after a few days. There is a huge oak tree in the yard behind the Jean family, which has grown there since they moved. There are some very old marks on the tree carved by a knife, and it is impossible to tell what they are. Around this tree, more than 10 pits appeared overnight, densely packed everywhere. Jean had never encountered anything so bizarre in her life. She thought maybe there was something wrong with the soil near the house, but she even called some workers to check, but found that the land there is normal. In the summer of that year, lots of ants began to appear in the house, and there were many ants showing up on the cabinets and curtains. These ants will die soon after they arrive at the house. But since most houses are made of wood and insect invasion is very common in that area, the couple didn't care much. But right after, they saw hordes of crows banging against the windows. Jean was perplexed every day. She always felt that something terrible had happened at home, but she couldn't tell what it was. In the second month after the pit appeared, Jean found that her granddaughter began to act very weird. The same thing happened to the granddaughter's kitten. One day, the kitten fled from the house into the forest like crazy. After the pet got lost, the granddaughter also seemed to be a different person, always staring out the window in a daze and often muttering to herself in some strange places in the house. What's more, she would clap her hands in the house, as if she was clapping with someone. Jean asked her granddaughter why she was clapping, and the granddaughter told her that she saw many black people standing in the pits in the yard, and those people were clapping against the house. There were some black people in the yard, feeling that something was wrong, and Jean's husband rushed the child to the hospital, but she was fine after getting checked by several doctors. One day in August 1984, when Jean was in a daze, she heard someone digging at the sliding door outside the yard. She went downstairs and opened the door, but saw nothing. When she was about to close the door, she suddenly saw a figure running around the house in front of her. Through the dim street light, she found that this person was not wearing clothes. In the middle of the night, a naked person circled around her house. Jean felt horrible and quickly woke her husband. The two went to check again, but found that the weirdo had fallen on the ground in the backyard. They walked over carefully, but when they approached near, Jean screamed in shock because the person who fell on the ground was Jean's old father, who had just moved in with them not long ago. Her father, who was already suffering from cancer, passed away the next day. Before he died, he couldn't utter any words, and his eyes kept staring at the window. Jean felt panicked by such happenings in the house. What's worse, the news of the haunting quickly spreads in the community. Surprisingly, there were at least 6 families in the surrounding area, all of whom expressed that they had encountered similar incidents after moving in. The neighbor, Sam, also noticed Jean at this time. Sam told Jean that he and his wife had dug up 2 bodies in the backyard a year ago. One of them is the woman named Betty. The couple reburied the corpse. They thought it was over, but after that, all kinds of weird things started to happen in the family. They often heard the sound of flushing water and clapping hands. The appliances can suddenly break down, and people can feel someone or something walking around the house at night. Sam also told Jean that after some investigation, he learned that there used to be a cemetery called Black Hope more than 100 years ago. He now suspected that the entire community there is likely to be built on this cemetery. All those who have dug the corpse out would be cursed by the undead, which explains why so many horrible things have happened since then. Despite the constant occurrence of strange things in the family, Jean never believed that this was a supernatural event before. But after hearing Sam saying, she started to believe that there is really a problem with the house. She checked the shape of the pits again and thought it looked like a coffin. That night, there was a thunderstorm in the suburbs of Newport, and Jen's husband returned home in the middle of the night after work. Jean and her granddaughter were already asleep, and the living room was dark. He walked to the kitchen to get some beer, but suddenly realized that something was wrong. He turned on the light, and as soon as he glanced at the corridor, he found 2 shadowy figures moving toward his wife's bedroom. He was so frightened that he rushed into the room, only to find that everything in the room was normal. Just when he wondered if he was too tired and hallucinated, he accidentally glanced at the ceiling. He saw 2 dark figures floating on the ceiling with their hands and feet stretched out, looking down at his wife on the bed. In the mid-1980s, 2 of the most haunted residents, Sam and his neighbor Jean, sued the local real estate developer in court on the grounds that they did not disclose that their house was built on a cemetery, causing a negative effect on the family. Sam and his wife have suffered from many serious illnesses since moving to their home there. On the other side, the situation of Jean's family is even more serious, including Jean's dead father. 6 relatives of the family were diagnosed with cancer, leukemia, and other serious diseases, and 3 of them have died. The 3 daughters of the Jean family were divorced after the move. Prior to this, the family members had not carried any serious illnesses. The bizarre incidents that took place on the streets of Pobbs quickly caused a huge discussion in the local area. The Sam family first sued the developer, demanding a total of $140,000 in compensation for mental damages. They showed evidence to the jury, including Betty's exhumed body and the results of an autopsy provided by a forensic doctor. But because Black Hope Cemetery dated back to the 19th century and was a wild tomb not registered with any official agency, the developers defended themselves, claiming that they didn't know there was a cemetery underground. The judge finally ruled that the developer did not bear any responsibility. The Sam family was ordered to pay $50,000 in court costs for losing the case. With no savings, they had to file for bankruptcy and move out of the house forever. But the Jim family then began to appeal their case. By then, their family had 6 members who had gotten cancer and other severe illnesses. However, the lawyer for the developer suggested that their situation could only be explained as a mere coincidence, and the plaintiff had no evidence of the existence of a cemetery in their backyard. Annoyed, Jin made up her mind to exhume the body in the pit in their backyard. However, she never thought that this would become the most regrettable decision she made in her life. After Jim came to the yard and began digging for 10 minutes, she felt dizzy. Their daughter offered to help her mother dig up the body. After about 30 minutes of digging, the daughter began to feel dizzy too, and she collapsed on the sofa. Jean thought that her daughter would recover by drinking some water, but she found that after lying down for a while, her daughter still did not get better. What's worse, she began to talk nonsense. Her eyes rolled around, screaming that there was something in the room. In the early morning of the next day, Jin's daughter died at the local hospital due to ineffective rescue. The cause of her death was a sudden heart attack. 3 months later, the Jim family no longer appealed, and the family moved out of Texas. So far, 4 people have died in the family. Jean later told reporters that she was thinking about fighting the developer to the end at first, but since her daughter left, she did not dare to do anything and just wanted to leave the house forever. Whether the streets of Pobbs are really haunted remains a mystery to this day. After many investigations later, it is true that a cemetery called Black Hope was built there more than 100 years ago. The mark carved on the Jim family tree is exactly the mark left by some poor people in the 19th century after simply burying their bodies. All the supernatural events occurred in the first batch of residents in the Pobbs community. At least dozens of people claimed that there were flashing lights and strange noises in the house. According to these phenomena, some people infer that the power system in the Pobbs area was just under repair at that time, and perhaps these abnormalities were caused by the instability of the voltage. Some people also believe that when Sam and Jane were digging in the yard, they happened to touch something harmful, which caused the 2 families to be infected by some rare bacteria and eventually caused those severe illnesses. But there are still no clear and convincing explanations on what caused the pits in the yard, and who the strange old man was that first came to Sam's house and reminded them not to dig their ground. To this day, Pobbs Street stands beside the highway in the suburbs of Newport. The community has beautiful scenery and a peaceful living environment. Thanks to the haunting legends, it has become a check-in spot for many supernatural fanatics. Some enthusiastic residents nearby even volunteered to tell the curious visitors about the history of the haunted houses and also the incredible things that ever happened in their own homes. But the John family's house was uninhabited for a long time, as if there was really some kind of curse there, and no one dared to touch the yard where the pit was located. This is Horror Mysteries. Enjoy and subscribe to know more mysteries around the world.